Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I am your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Marcy McKenna. Marcy is a product inventor, live shopping expert, and brand strategist. In addition to inventing amazing products, Marcy is also the executive producer and show host of the InventHer Live with Marcy McKenna show, which streams live every Thursday on the live shopping platform, Market.Live. She's the founder of the Women Inventors Club and also the founder and CEO of the Live Shopping Academy. You can find Marcy on LinkedIn by searching Marcy McKenna or by going to marcymckenna.com. Hello, Marcy. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Hello, Olivia. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the very wonderful introduction.
Well, I'm so excited to dive into everything. To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Marcy McKenna?
I like that question. Yes, for me, I started my career in inventing about 12 years. And when I started, I had a very specific why that has driven me since that very moment. And so for me, I very much tie success to how I'm doing with that why. And so I do reflect back on that a lot. But beyond just that, for me now, it's sort of evolved in a couple ways that I wouldn't have thought of or foreseen. And one of the big ones for me is success for me. And I don't know that I've gotten there quite yet, but is getting to a place where I can be truly present with my friends and family and, finding that balance. Working a lot right now, but I'm so passionate about what I do. I feel so lucky. I want to get to a place where I can do that, but then also feel as present and balanced with my friends and family as I possibly can. And then the last piece of that, I would say, has to do with having an impact. And when I started out, that wasn't even on the radar for me. It was more like, I need to do this for my why, which we can get into that later, but for my family, was a big part of that. And now as things have evolved, I have found ways to really give back and to help others. And so for me, that's a really big piece of success, at least an internal feeling of success is when I'm helping others and seeing their growth. That's really just a wonderful feeling.
For sure. And you and I, we've discussed this. We're like kindred spirits to some extent, because to me, that is a big part of why even the show happened and why I do my coaching and everything I do in the aspect of how I can help affect other people in a positive light and give back, through our own journeys. We sometimes forget that it's our triumphs, the struggles and getting through it that can help build someone else up, not just in the moment, but years to come. And sharing those strategies in those moments of, hey, I was there too, or I struggle in secret sometimes too, can really help someone else and make an impact on their life. It doesn't just have to be through one, sale of a product all the time or one moment of service. It's really, what is your kindness, right? What is that act of kindness you are doing to help others grow and succeed in their journey? And I want to start off with you and discussing what really made you dive into the inventing world and what was your goal in creating your products and thinking long term too.
So that is another question with many parts. I'll try to keep it as succinct as I can, but I will start by saying that I was born into a family of inventors. My great grandfather was a big time inventor. He invented the delay mechanism for the bomb back in World War II, the starting gate for horse racing. So lots of things. And that always intrigued me. And I feel like my mind has always worked that way, where I've always wanted to make something better. I'm one who walks into a restaurant and always thinking about how they could have done things better and, always trying to fix things. So that's just kind of who I am. And for years and years, I kept a white binder that is now about this thick of all of my ideas and thought someday I'm going to take one of these ideas or all of them and turn them into real life products and get them out there on the market. But that binder just kept getting more full and more full. But at the same time, kind of collecting dust. I was never doing anything with it until about 12 years ago, when my husband's industry took a turn. He's in the film industry, and ironically, he's a writer and producer, and the writers went on strike about 12 years ago, and they're on strike now. So here we are, full circle again. But that was a really scary time for me. I'm a mother of three. My middle child is special needs, and our bank account was just going down and down and down. And there was just no end in sight with the strike. He wasn't allowed to work. I was a stay-at-home mom. And so it was just this moment of panic. And I thought, you know what? This is time. It's time. I've got to get that binder out and come hell or high water, take at least one of the products and turn them into something that could make us some money and give our family some security during that tough time. And then ironically, when I did that, literally that night, I opened my binder. I knew just the product I wanted to turn into a real product, or the idea I wanted to turn into a real product. And I started searching online, Google patents, and, just want to make sure I wasn't infringing and there wasn't something else out there. And I stumbled across, Kelly Ripa had a invention reality show that she was getting ready to launch. And she was looking for female inventors that had a product that could be successful on HSN. And funny enough, in my mind, when I created this product, I thought HSN or QVC would be a home run. So it just felt so serendipitous. And I just thought, this is clearly a sign and I've got to go for it. I've got to push fear aside. And I did. And the stars were aligned. I went on the show and ended up winning. And that really opened the door and was the impetus to creating a career in inventing. And so that was the beginning. And here I am 12 years later, and I'm still on HSN.
And I think you brought up a few big points here. One of which is sometimes you have to put the fear aside. Sometimes, fear can be taking over of whether it's in our personal life with relationships or taking that next step in that friendship, that personal relationship with your significant other, whether it's taking a job, whatever it might be. Sometimes that fear takes over. And instead of taking that next step and saying, no, I'm going to do this, whatever the outcome, I'm going to do it and I'm going to own it. We take a step back. We go, okay, nope, I'm going to back down. The fear's too great. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I'm going to take that step down. For you, as you had brought up, you had a lot of stakes on the line. You wanted to do something. You were feeling the pressure. And I want to ask the question of how did you handle that pressure in the moment of being like, whether I take this step forward and I just do this and whatever the outcome is, but also knowing, sometimes people say it's easier to take a step forward when you have the means. If you fall, there is that safety cushion. For you at that time, it probably felt like there wasn't. And there's a lot of business owners who probably feel the same, that if, you fail, you've lost savings, you've lost time, you've lost maybe time in your personal life. How did you handle that while also being a mom to 3 kids and having that extra layer of a family member that potentially needed more help due to having special needs?
Yeah. Well, how I handled it and how I made the decision, really for me, it was this moment of, and I remember saying it to myself, that there is no plan B. Failure is not an option. And I'm going to pull out all the stops and do everything in my power to see this through. And it had been something that's been in the back of my mind, wanting to do and dreaming of doing, but more as a fun thing because I loved inventing. Like, it was so fun, but I do think that fear was in my way. The fear of failure, the fear of people knowing that I tried it and it didn't work. So this gave me a reason to push through that fear because I just didn't see any other options in that moment. And I remember, because it was my 40th birthday, right when it happened, And I just remember I wrote, which later became a blog. It was sort of a journal for myself about that, about there being no plan B and what I would do to push through every single day. And one of the key things when I look back and think what made it work is I remember that I said every single day before I go to bed, I'm going to do 3, what I called at the time, bold moves to move me toward my goal. And I will not let myself go to sleep until those 3 bold moves were done. And when I say bold moves, those are those scary things that we put aside because we just, it could even be just a phone call to someone that's, really high up and you're afraid isn't going to take the call. But something that was scary, yet something that was a needle mover that would move me toward getting this product on the market and making money and providing security for the family. And so I did that day in and day out. And every morning I wrote down what those 3 bold moves were. And I literally would not go to bed until they were done. And I was so blown away. And I have to remind myself of that story all the time, because anytime I'm feeling a little stuck and not making progress, I go back to it and I go, wait a minute, I've fallen off my 3 bold moves. Because every time, but I backed off on that a little, where to me now it's 1 bold move. Because that time it was just such crunch time that I had to really power ahead. That was a lot of pressure. And so now it's 1, because that bold needle mover, it's amazing the progress you can make when you force yourself to do that every single day.
And I think that's amazing and something that we all have to evaluate within ourselves. What is driving us? What is our option? And what is a way we're going to push ourselves? I think for you, it was definitely the fear aspect, as you had brought up, of that feeling of not wanting to let others down. There was no other choice, that there was no plan B. And for myself too, when I'm the kind of person, and I've learned, like, if you tell me I can't do something, now watch out. Because it might not be today and it might not be tomorrow. But the thing you thought was the reaching the moon that I said I was going to make happen, or you just thought, don't set your sights there, I'm going to do. And for me, quick little story, that has always been my motto of this is probably the first time I'm really saying that. So we'll see now how people perceive this. But I had that when I was younger. I was diagnosed with epilepsy, a version of epilepsy that ended up becoming rare in its own standing. And now I don't have seizures. But when I was first diagnosed, they told me and my parents, like, her brain functionality to learn and be able to perceive information and even like go on to middle school, because I was in elementary school at the time, might not be there without a special needs classroom, or she might not be able to do it. And then I ended up graduating college, and we have a podcast and everything else, and you would have no idea. But there's situations like that, or situations I remember, and my parents joke when this ends up coming out in general conversations. I applied to multiple schools. I got into all of them. There was one school where I ended up going, Quinnipiac University, that I stepped on campus the first time and I said, I'm going to go here. It was before I even applied. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to this school. And I ended up doing early decision for that school, or they have rolling admission. So like as soon as you could really apply. And I was like, I'm going. I don't need to apply to other schools. And my parents were like, no, this isn't how this goes, right? You gotta apply.
Back up.
Yeah,
yes.
You need options. I ended up getting into Quinnipiac, and it was between that and one other school. I ended up going back and forth, mainly because of scholarship money. But I turned back to, okay, no, I want to go here. This is where I'm going. When I ended up working at the Giants, I remember when I found Jerry Reese's email address, in a deep dive of research, I ended up reaching out, and people were like, okay, first of all, he's never going to answer. He did answer, but also, like, you're never going to work pro. And then I ended up working pro. When I graduated and I was looking for a job during COVID because I went back and got my MBA. I said, I want to work at Lockheed Martin. I'm going to work at Lockheed Martin. And people were like, Lockheed Martin's top tier and it's COVID. Like, you're not getting in. Long story short, got in.
Of course you did.
So it's all these things that I always joke. I'm like, when you think you're putting me down, you're helping rise me up. And
Yes.
I know you're going to help me rise up, whether you realize it or not. But thank you for underestimating me in this moment, because your underestimating me is only fueling me to not just level where I want to go, but exceed what I want to do. And I think we all need that mindset. And we all need the mindset to figure out what it's going to be. And, you know, it's not like that all the time. Sometimes we all have those moments where we need the friend. We need that, you know, mentor, that person to be like, in this tough moment, you got this. You already have the bootstraps on. Let's go. I know what you can do. We all need that person sometimes when we don't even believe, or, you know, we're wrapped up in the world. But we also need our core motivator. And for me, that's when you underestimate me, then good luck. Wait till you see what's about to come. And I would say the more you underestimate me and the more I hear about how many people are underestimating me, I already know the levels I'm going to succeed at because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Marcy.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it is that doubter, that person in your life that doubted you, that chip on your shoulder because they doubted you, that can really push you over the finish line to success.
And I think
everyone has a different why, but that's one of them for sure.
And I've heard so many celebrities say this, and I love Pitbull. And I heard him say his haters are his motivators. And I think he goes, and, you know, I hear, different artists, like Cardi B go, I love my haters. And people would think, why do you love the people hating on you? You know, especially at that level, you know, bashing you on social media and helping. But in reality, it tends to motivate us. And it is a driving motivator for a lot of people. But once I think we believe enough in ourselves, whether it's feeling like you don't have that plan B, being like, I have to dive all in, I have to give it a chance for myself. If you can't do it, I also look at things as if you're going to do it for someone else and not for yourself, then you're really not setting yourself up to succeed. Because if you have to do something, whether it's change one of your personality traits for someone else, whether it's change how you operate fundamentally because of someone else, that's not going to be long sustaining. When you want to do something, whether it's business oriented, whether it's personally, because you want to do it, whether that is to grow just for yourself, to help with that relationship grow, it has more power in it. You have more power in what you're trying to do. And your level of identity and your level of thinking shifts. And I think you hold the most power within yourself. Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Marcy, you are a producer of the show InventHer Live with Marcy McKenna. How does your perspective of inventing building others up play a role in how you produce your show?
Yeah, well, InventHer Live is a show that I actually launched with the United Inventors Association in February, which is the National Women Inventors Month. I was going to say women owned, but Women Inventors Month. So we launched it for that purpose. And it was intended to be just for the month of February, but it took off in such a great way that we have continued it on, and it's now become sort of an evergreen show. And I feel so blessed to do it. I look forward to it every single week because I have the honor of really shining a much deserved light on the women inventors in I was going to say in our country, but it's now global. In our world, I had an inventor on from Italy recently. That was a ton of fun. She just launched a new product. But I also started it, and why I started my passion project of giving back to the inventor community is that during COVID, I learned a staggering statistic, and that is that only 7% of the patents that are filed in America are done so by women. And that really blew my mind because I, for so long, had so many women reaching out to me with these phenomenal ideas. And I would try and encourage them to, take the idea and run with it and give them my tips and things like that. And for whatever reason, so few women were doing it. And I wanted to understand why. And I wanted to find a way where I could help support and empower and inspire these women to actually follow through and make it happen, and to teach them that it's not rocket science, that there is a path and anyone can do it. It's not as difficult as you might think. And I'm happy to say, and this is not tooting my horn, me thinking it's because of me, but I'm happy to say only a few, 2 to 3 years later now, that number has grown to over 13%. So it's exciting to see the progress happening with women inventors. And I do think women, a couple things I think are holding us back. And one is it was when I started, such a male dominated industry. It was very intimidating. And I thought, gosh, if I ever have success, I want to create something for women where they can feel comfortable asking the questions, where their phone call will get returned, where they're, really can feel supported by others and, lock arms with other women who have that ambition and that inspiration to bring something to life. And so that's kind of how all of this has taken off. And it's just been so rewarding. And you talked about sometimes you need a friend to lift you up and to help you through. We doubt ourselves. We go through those times that we're thinking we can't do it. And so that's really partially why we're doing the show, is to have people feel like they're part of a community, and seeing other people doing it kind of lifts you up to do it. But more importantly, it's why I created the Women Inventors Club. Is I thought I want to have this community where we can lock arms and support each other and cheer each other on, share tools and resources and best practices. And it has been truly amazing to see what has happened inside this group of women. And it's just growing and growing. And they are really the courage that I'm seeing. It's just night and day because they have each other. And I think in this disconnected world that we feel like we live in right now, having that connection and not feeling like you're a solopreneur, but yet you're a part of a team, can make all the difference between success and failure, or going for it or putting it aside. And, putting it on the back burner, I'll get to it someday, getting distracted. But when you have this team that you're working with, you keep going. And every day you put one foot in front of the other. And before you know it, you've launched and you've got a product on Amazon or HSN or QVC or wherever you have it. And it's so fun and so exciting. And I think that was a very long-winded answer to your question. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine. And it actually went into what I was going to bring up next, was the Women's Inventors Club and what you're doing there. So perfect segue, to be honest. You knew.
Right.
You were reading my mind.
We are kindred spirits.
For you, talking about the Women's Inventors Club and the growth that has had, and you even said the stat, it almost doubled the amount of patents and inventions women are actually trying to bring to market in just a few years. What made you go, we need this group of women to help build women up, and your goals with that organization that you created?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it was about creating a safe space, creating a space where women could go and could, as I said a little bit earlier, ask those questions that they might be afraid to ask in front of a bunch of, good old boys that might look down on you for asking something that you should already know. So it was really about that more than anything, because I felt it when I was trying to get my products launched. I knew firsthand what that was like. And I knew that I wanted to help propel more women to dive into the world of inventing and to take a dream and follow it and make it happen. And I thought the best way to do it is to show them that it's safe, that you have a group that will support you in this, and to show them that there is a step-by-step path to make it happen. So it's inside that group that I'm sharing When I started, I literally had my Google search bar, my pencil, my, my white binder, and that's it. I didn't know anything about inventing other than coming up with ideas. And I'm so glad that I didn't know enough to even know that there were books about it at the time, because now that I am where I am, I'll go back and look at books and read articles out of curiosity. And had I followed those, I would have never been successful, because so many of those things that are out there right now are kind of these, somebody saw it on the internet, so they cut and pasted it into an article kind of a thing, but it's not real world. And when I dove in and I had no plan B and failure was not an option, I had to get scrappy and I had to figure it out on my own and use my instincts about what would work and what wouldn't work. And I had to push people that told me no to get them to see, who told me something couldn't be done, just tell them, oh, yes, it can be done. And here's how we're going to do it together. I'm so grateful for what I didn't know, because it has led to me coming up with that path that I'm sharing with all these women to show them that it can be done. And yeah, maybe we're not always doing it the most traditional way that you read about in a textbook, but the way that I'm doing it has worked for me. I've brought 40 products to market doing it this way. I can't guarantee it's going to work for you, but I'm so happy to share it in hopes that it does. And then what I found in creating the group was all these other women were coming in and successful inventors and wanting to share their path. And they have ideas that I wouldn't have ever considered. And so I'm learning from them. And it's just this real give and take supportive relationship that's really kind of lifting everybody up to their greatest potential. And it's just so cool every day to be in there where people are cheering each other on for their, they're launching a product on Amazon today and they just got their website up, or they just found a supplier, or whatever it is. It's progress. And every day there's a little bit of progress. And it's just so fun to see. And people that doubted themselves, that were coming into the group and being very quiet and not, no comments, no anything, and now are just out front, just, rocking it. It's so great, so rewarding.
You brought up something interesting I want to highlight here, is that in the 12 years since you've started this, you've brought 40 products to market.
Yes.
And items that people love. Why don't you dive more into telling us what makes you think of these products and that process of inventing and getting it to market and really seeing them thrive, and what some of the products are that people can find?
Well, as far as what makes me think of the products, for me, it's really usually I'm designing products that by necessity, things that I need to help myself, whether it's getting organized. But many of my products are around organization. Right now, my product line on HSN is a home and travel organization line, very much more focused on travel at the moment. So it's luggage. It's my hero product is my beauty case that's been on HSN for years, and it sort of has a cult following. And we come out with new designs every few months, really. And just 2 weeks ago, I launched a whole new travel collection with a travel tote and a little mini beauty case and a new carry-on with all these innovative features. And all of this kind of came about because when I was traveling, I was very frustrated by the lack of organization. And I always felt like I'd open up a suitcase and it was like, these have been created by men for men. It's just this big empty box with no organization at all. And so usually it's about, there's got to be a better way. And when people ask me, when they say they want to come up with products, the number one piece of advice I give them is to really slow down and to look around you. And this happened a lot for me during COVID, of what are those little annoyances in your life that, that you feel frustrated with and you wish it was done better. Because to me, most people get annoyed with those kind of frustrations. But for me, I get excited because where there's a frustration, there's a solution. And where there's a solution, there's an invention. And where there's an invention, there's a product. And so that's kind of the progression that happens. So, I look for those problems, and then I go to the proof of concept stage of, can my solution work? And I don't spend a lot of money. I definitely bootstrapped it in the beginning, and I still bootstrap it because it's more fun to me. And so I'm making prototypes with items that are around my house. My very first prototype was done by my 7-year-old son at the time, and he did it out of Legos. And this ended up going a little bit viral because Huffington Post, I think it was, did a story on it, and the Daily Mail picked it up, and they just destroyed me because they made it sound like my son had come up with this great idea and built the prototype out of Legos, and I stole it. And I turned it into a product and launched it on HSN, and I squandered all his money and all of this. So, you know how that stuff goes. But point being, you don't have to spend a lot of money on a big fancy company to create a prototype. You don't have to hire a big fancy lawyer to get you a patent to launch a product. I have 40 products on the market. I have 1 patent. So, I think every time somebody comes up with an idea, they automatically think, oh my gosh, I've got to go protect it. Someone's going to steal it. I got to get a patent. I have so many thoughts about that. That's a whole nother show. But I have lots of videos on my thoughts on that on my YouTube channel. So you can definitely check that out. But so I do, as I said, I'm a little bit scrappy in that I just kind of go with my gut about how to build it, conceptualize it. And then once I know it works, then I do a lot of market testing. I really kind of geek out on that and making sure before I spend any money on it and produce it, that there's a market for it, there's an audience for it, and find out what they'll spend for that solution. And that is a step that a lot of inventors bypass because they're so excited about their product. They spend all the money on it and then they launch it and it's crickets. And so I'm really trying to educate people on how important product validation is in the invention process.
And I think that's so important, is not necessarily skipping a step just because you're excited or you're feeling the pressure and you're like, we have to get it to market. There's certain things, like you said, the side of patents, that there's things people don't realize, or the side of making sure, I always talk about, it's not necessarily how fast you can do something. It's what value that timetable is providing, right? So I've talked about this with clients. You can wake up today and say, I'm going to start a podcast. And by tonight, you're filming your first episode. And it goes for 6 months. But then, like you said, you hear the crickets. There's nothing happening. You're like, why isn't nothing happening? Why is no one listening? And it's because you went from 0 to 100 without taking any of the steps or understanding the importance of the steps, that now, 3 months later, you're spending money, time that you've already committed to something, to backtrack it, to then put the right processes and procedures in place. And I have a quote that I say, I've said it before, I say it with my friends: piss poor planning leads to piss poor performance. You need the planning to lead you to the performance you want. And so by not planning, you get into situations that you don't want. You end up hurting yourself in the long run. So I very much agree with you that, sometimes it is understanding the steps that can really elevate what you're trying to do. And like you said, it's the market validation, especially in inventions, to understanding how the customer feels about it, what the customer is willing to pay for it, that can really help you succeed. For you, how have you learned from the different steps you've taken over your career and maybe pivoted a little bit?
Well, I'll start with the one patent. So that was my first product. I ran out and got a patent. And you look back and I think of the time and the money that went into that. And I have to, reflect back and ask myself, was it worth it? Would I do it again? And this is not to say that a patent is never right. It is never necessary. Every situation is different. But you do have to ask yourself the right questions when you hit these pivotal moments in your process. And when it comes to a patent, you have to ask yourself whether you have deep enough pockets to defend it if somebody should knock it off. Because right now, the average lawsuit, patent infringement lawsuit, the least amount you're going to spend is about $1 million. So, and that's just getting warmed up. So it's very expensive to defend it. And then you look at the success rate of defending a patent, and it's not great. So that's important to think about. So it's not just the money that you're putting out to get the patent and the time. What I find is that so many times inventors get stuck on this hamster wheel. So it'll be years and the product still isn't out because they're caught up in the patenting and the prototyping and, kind of head down, where I would so much rather, and raising money to pay for the prototypes and the patents and all these things. And then when the product gets ready or comes close to getting out there, there's no money left to market it. Mm-hmm. And so I would so much rather many times, if they could take a step back, slow down, think through the decision-making process, they would probably choose to take that same amount of money and put it toward marketing. Because if you don't get the product out there and the world doesn't know about it, you do not have a business. And so I really try and teach. I start marketing when I come up with the idea. And when I validate, proof of concept, I know I'm going to move forward with it. The marketing wheel begins. And part of that that's so important for me is understanding who is my ideal customer for that particular product. Because if I understand that, many times it changes the design of my product. That's why it's so important to do it early on, because who is she or he? What style do they like? Where do they hang out online? How are they going to see this for the first time? Is it going to be important for me to stop the scroll? Is there going to be a lot of competition? So I need to build a feature in that has a sort of a wow factor that maybe wasn't there to begin with, so that it does catch their attention. So things like that. Unfortunately, I think too many inventors end up spending all that time and money and effort and energy on the things that aren't going to create a business and create a successful product.
And you brought up such an interesting stat about, what it really takes to defend your patent, and it takes a lot of money and time to create a patent. Even if you do it on your own, it can be $1,000, $2,000. I don't know the exact number, so do not quote me on it.
A lot more than that. Yeah.
So please don't. But it's going to take money, but it's also going to take your time. And what you said that I think a lot of people never even think about, whether you're in the inventing area or not, is what happens if you have to defend that? How much is it going to cost? And is it worth the time and the money to you to then have to go and defend it? And do you have those resources? Or are you allocating, like you said, are you allocating your resources in a way that will help you grow? I think that's so important to understand, is you really have to sit down in the beginning, come up with your budget. Whether, I had that conversation with a friend who's getting married. I'm planning their bridal shower. The soon-to-be husband's actually paying for the bridal shower, and I'm planning the whole thing. I said, what's your budget? They go, oh, we don't know. Make it reasonable. I said, no, what's the budget? We have to sit down. And I do know they both listen to the show, so they're going to laugh. But it's that idea that what could be reasonable to me and a good way for me to allocate might not work for Marcy, might not work for someone else. So you have to sit down and go, okay, if this is what I have realistically, and whether that's because of donors or you're doing it on your own, like Marcy and I do, it's, okay, what do I realistically have? What am I realistically able to allocate? And then how should that look? What areas really need it? And what if I, kind of shift on over time? What are those areas as well? And it's important to keep that in mind, I think. And that, like you said, when it comes to aspects like that, people tend to overlook it. You get so excited and drawn in the process that by the time you get to the end of the process, whether it's money or your own mental state or your physical well-being, you don't have enough to push home.
Yeah. And when in the world of inventing, a question that's really important to ask yourself up front and to really take time to consider is this a product that, what is your ultimate goal for the product? Are you wanting to build a business around it and you want it to bring it to life yourself? Or do you want to license it? Do you want to hand it off to another company and collect a royalty and go on to your next product or go into retirement or wherever you are in your life? Because what you said is so true about for each person, we all have our different goals and our different limitations. And so taking time to think that through when you have a product or a business idea is really, really important, because that's really, at least in the world of product innovation, it's really going to change the way you go about things moving forward. Because if you are going to license it, for example, that patent becomes more important because that's going to be important to somebody who would be wanting to license. They want some kind of protection. Is it a must if you're going to license that you have a patent? It's still not. No, I've licensed several products with 0 patents and 0 prototypes, actually. So that's all doable, but you just need to think through what it is you want at the end of the game. And, that the point that you made about not skipping steps, really slowing down and thinking through all those things, that is instrumental to your ultimate success. And I believe when you do that and you find out what the questions are that you might not know to ask, that's going to really, really make a difference.
And I love how you said that it's slowing down, asking the questions, but asking as well the questions you didn't think you needed to ask or didn't know to ask. I think sometimes there's a lack of communication or a lack of understanding just because we don't know the questions to ask, or we're scared to, back to the fear part, we're scared to have the conversation. I think whether that's in your personal life or your professional life, so many times the fear of just not knowing what the answer could be and what that conversation could hold sets us up to not do something. Whereas if you had just asked the question, it could have been something you weren't even thinking. An objective or perspective, I should really say, that you didn't even really know about, or you thought you knew, but you didn't. And it changes how you move forward. And I think that's so important to really understand is it's just as important to ask the question, but know what you want to ask and knowing the right way to ask it too.
Well, and I could imagine if I'm listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, I might say, well, you guys are saying, make sure to ask the questions you don't know to ask. Well, how would we know what those are if we don't know to ask them? And that's where I just want to say find a group of people. Find a network. There are Facebook groups. There's a Facebook group for everything that you can possibly imagine. And if you're stepping into a new world where there is a bit of unknown and there is a bit of uncertainty about steps, get inside of a group like that, or a local, in my case, it's inventor groups, but to surround yourself with others who are doing what you're doing and that you can lean on them and ask them those questions. That when I go back to the Women Inventors Club, that's the most valuable part, is that women are just jumping in saying, I just have an idea. I know nothing. What should I be? Where should I start? And it's amazing how many people will chime in with their thoughts on the first step and the second step, and then it'll create a debate. And it's always very interesting. And we can all take the morsels from it that work for our particular situation and leave the other morsels behind. But at least we know what those morsels are. And we might not have known if we hadn't been a part of a group. So whatever industry, whatever world you're in, if you're embarking on something new, I can't recommend enough to find a group to connect with and to get in there and start asking questions. And don't be afraid, because there is no dumb question. We all have questions. So nobody's any different. Mm-hmm. And it's those questions that not only help you, but it helps everybody else around you to learn as well.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a great way for us to go into wrapping up the show. So Marcy, how can people get in touch with you?
the best way, the easiest way would be just to go to my website, because you can kind of get to everything from my website. And so that's my name, Marcy McKenna, Marcy with a Y, MARCY, McKenna, MCKENNA.com.
Thank you, Marcy, for all of your insight today.
Absolutely. It was really fun. Thank you for having me.
A few of our key takeaways from today's conversation are sometimes telling yourself there's no plan B is what you need to make you elevate yourself and push forward. When you don't have something to fall back on, it really shows your resiliency, how you approach situations, how you handle them, and you prove a lot to yourself because it can be accomplishable. And even if it doesn't end up being something that you end up accomplishing or feeling like you met the goals, there's key takeaways and things you learned about yourself and the situation that will help you to grow to the next level you want to in the next situation, as well as what is your bold move going to be for the day? I love how Marcy brings up, setting what that move is going to be and that goal for the day makes you stay focused, but really continues to make you move the needle in a positive direction. So sometimes even when you're feeling lost or you're feeling like you can't do it, go back to what you said that goal, that bold move was going to be, and see how close you are to accomplishing it and what you need to do. As well as look at the things you don't like and try to solve those problems. Inventing isn't necessarily coming up with a brand new concept that never has been thought of before, but it is solving the problem you want solved and bringing that solution to the table. As well as sometimes it is okay to be scrappy. Marcy brought it up a lot. She's a scrappy person, go-getter, which I love. I'm totally the same way. It is okay to be scrappy. In some situations, there's other ways to handle things, like a conversation. You don't always need to be scrappy in a conversation with someone, but it is okay to be unapologetically scrappy to grow yourself. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Marcy McKenna. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.